Hi folks, this is Matthew here with Hiveroaster. Today we're going to roast a Nicaragua Natural coffee. So I've got my stove, I've got a Hiveroaster right here. We've got the digital display. I've got it turned so you guys can see it. I can as well, but that way you guys can keep track of the temperature. So the first thing we're going to want to do is get ourselves 150 grams of coffee. There we go, 150 grams. Now, you can do a little bit more, you can do a little bit less. I like to do 150 grams, mainly because I can take 1 pound and I can split it into 3 roasts. Also, it seems to really fit the roaster well. I get a nice heat transfer. I just really like how it works that way. If I ever seem a little distracted, I live on a busy, or my shop's on a busy street, and I'm actually waiting for a plumber to show up because the upstairs building's leaking a little bit. So, we've got our roaster loaded, ready to go. We're going to turn our flame on to about medium. Turn this off so I don't waste gas. And I'm going to go ahead and run a timer with this roast. And the whole point is I just want to see basically how long it takes. Okay. Medium flame. And we're rocking. We're rolling. We're roasting. So you can see we're starting out, what is that? 72, 73.4, 74. Little wire management issue here. There we go. That looks good. All right, cool. So we're 30 seconds into our roast. I'm sorry if I don't look at the camera all that much. I'm not a professional video guy. I'm just a mechanic who likes to make stuff, so kind of is what it is. And yes, I'm wearing a Slayer shirt. You know, Slayer makes espresso machines. Kind of a high-end, creative sort of thing. Pretty neat machine. I used to be a salesman and I used to sell them, amongst other things. So we are at 1 minute. We're at 106 degrees, so we've raised 35 degrees in the first minute. So we're on track. I find in the Hive, because you're starting out with a cold roaster, that your first minute's a little slow. Second minute's much faster, and then it declines from there. The reason why it declines is because you've got a certain amount of heat, and you've gotten a certain mass within your within the roaster and the beans, and so with a given amount of heat, it can only ever heat up so fast. As you get closer to the maximum temperature of that whole setup, what happens is you start accelerating slower, and it's a lot like a vehicle, a car, right, where you're driving, and from 0 to 30, they're rockets, and then as you get faster and faster, like the difference between 55 and say 70, it doesn't accelerate nearly as fast. And that's because you're reaching the maximum speed of the car. Here we go. We're at 2 minutes right now at 165. I guess I could turn this thing around so you guys could see it too, huh? Does that work? Hey, look at that. We're like professional. All right. Hope I don't overheat my phone. That's kind of cool. I like that. I'm trying to figure out a way to be able to get that stuff on the screen where it's more useful so you guys can, you know, kind of monitor what's going on with the roast a little bit better. You still see that? Yeah, it looks good. So if you guys haven't been on Instagram and checked out Instagram TV, I've got a lot of videos on there. That's been the main place that I've done videos. I've done live roasting on Instagram for over a year now. I've probably got 80 videos on there. There's not only roasting videos, but there's also videos where I drink coffee and talk about it. And so it's kind of interesting. I tend to ramble. I tend to get off track and talk about all kinds of weird stuff as I roast. And it's just part of it is it's kind of a lot because I'm physically doing something with my hand. I'm smelling the coffee. I'm trying to decide how to optimize this roast, and I'm trying to give you guys information. And so when I do all three of those at the same time, it gets a little distracting. This I'm just recording for YouTube on my computer, and then I'll upload this later or whatever. on Instagram, if you guys go on there and get with a live roast, you guys can ask questions as I'm doing it. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because, you know, it really helps if you see what I'm doing right then and there, and you can say, hey, why are you doing that? We can talk about it right then, and I think the information's pretty good that way. I've helped a lot of people learn how to roast coffee, and I pride myself on it. I think it's a real fun thing to do. Obviously, I want to sell you guys roasters as well, but, you know, it's I love coffee. I'm super passionate about it. You know, I mean, this is a business for me. I'm trying to make money. You can see the size of my operation. I mean, there's another room in behind me here. You can see some of the machinery in there. And I've got some, you know, some pretty cool stuff, but it's also pretty rudimentary. And, you know, like that bicycle in the background, a lot of times I deliver roasters on that to the post office. I mean, I don't know. It's fun. You know, I like to ride my bike mainly. But we're coming up on 300 degrees. Now, 300 degrees is like, there's three ways to call it. You can call it 300 degrees. You can call it end of dry. You can call it beginning of yellow. End of drying phase is really the technical term, I guess. I tend to call it yellow. And the reason why I'm focusing on that is because you can really time your entire roast on how long it took to get to yellow. So in other words, if you hit yellow at 6 minutes of roasting, you've got a fairly slow roast going. So I'm at 3 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm at 305 minutes. So I'm a little bit fast compared to like my typical slow roast. So my option is to slow this down now if I was concerned about it. I'm not really, I'm just gonna go with it. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and extend out my development period a lot. And so we'll go ahead and have an overall roast time of like 12 or 13 minutes. We'll hit pop probably, I don't know, I'm looking at probably about 8 minutes, something like that. And then right before the pop, you'll see we're gonna slow this thing down, and we're just gonna basically take it just as slow as we possibly can, because we want to develop. And why do we want to develop? Well, basically you're converting carbohydrate into sugar, among other things, and then you're caramelizing that sugar. And so the lead up to the pop, you're basically converting and you're making the sugar available. Then you're converting it into, you know, you're caramelizing it, and this is the, you know, part of the process. And so the slower and longer that you do that, the more sugar that you're going to produce from the roast. The faster you do it, you're typically not going to, you know, have a lot of that sugar. And controlling the heat during that time when you've got that sugar happening is super important, because you can spend, you know, 2 or 3 minutes trying to you know, caramelize your sugar, and then in 5 seconds burn it off by turning your heat up too much. And so once you get into that period, you kind of got to commit, and you want to keep it real mellow and real calm. So I'm at 352. I'm at coming up on 7 minutes right now. So that's a pretty good pace, you know. I'm liking it. And again, you know, it's just that you want that long development, at least with this coffee. So because I'm roasting a natural, I can smell a lot of smell coming off of this. And part of it smells a bit like burning sugar. It definitely has like a smell like you'd expect later in a roast, but it's happening early because there's all this sugar on the exterior of the beans, and that's from the fruit that's left over. Naturally processed coffees, there's a lot of pulp left on the bean, or not really pulp, but just kind of like some business, you know, some like little bits of dried juice and all that. Well, that stuff, you know, burns, and it burns off. And so what happens is that as you're roasting, way before the pop, it'll start smelling like you're actually further along than you are. Now I'm turning my heat down pretty radically. I turned down almost half of the input that I had, and you can see I'm at 383, 5, 6, and the point is I'm trying to slow this down so as I get into the pop, I'm running really nice and slow. There it is, there's a pop. You guys hear that? And so you can see my rate of rise is slowed way down. I'm now at 393, I've now got a phone call from the landlord talking about the leak in the roof, but we're not going to handle that right now. Sorry about that, Chris, if you're watching. I know you're not, but we're live roasting here. This is important. This is valuable information we're trying to disseminate to our customer base. So we're still at 396. So we have definitely accomplished a nice slow development with this coffee. So now I've got to make sure I don't really stall out and start going backwards. So I'm going to focus on that temperature gauge and just make sure that I'm still positively progressing. Now, if you don't have a gauge, if you don't have a way to be able to view your temperature, you can just do this by smell. It's a little bit more complex. It's harder to tell. As far as like, you know, am I still going positive? Am I going negative? But the key is you just want to always have a different smell. So as you're roasting, it smells different, and it smells different, and it smells different the whole time. And so as long as you keep smelling new smells, you're roasting and you have a positive rate of rise. Another trick with Hiveroaster only is that the Hiveroaster incinerates smoke as it roasts. So that's why I'm able to roast inside this room, and I don't even have a fan running right now. And the way it does it is the heat comes up through the center of the roaster, and it just creates enough heat right at the exit to burn off a lot of the smoke. Almost all the carbon, but a lot of the smoke. So anyways, as long as this roaster is still incinerating the smoke effectively, you probably have a positive rate of rise. If you start to see that it's smoking a lot, like when you turn down the heat and you're getting a lot of smoke out of it, you may have turned down the heat too low because it needs a certain amount of smoke to be able to actually incinerate, or a certain amount of heat to be able to incinerate the smoke. And so like right now, I can see no smoke, but if I do this, I can see it. And I don't want to do that too long. Keep your roaster over the flame because just that little bit there, it's really it'll affect my rate of rise. And it's funny because when I first started doing this, I did it all at my house, right? And my refrigerator's like right here. And so I'd be roasting, and at this point, I was running the data dome. So I've got a graph that I can see of my roast. And, 7-8 minutes into it, I think, I'd like a beer, you know? So I reach over, open up the refrigerator, get a beer, pop that thing open, start drinking it, and look at my rate of rise, and my graph would drop way down because I just wasn't paying attention. I wasn't keeping my roaster centered over the flame. I maybe wasn't agitating properly. It was just enough of a difference to make it so that it would, change my rate of rise. Now, does it matter for the roast? Not at all. It's still fine. But it'll definitely affect it. And so it's important to realize that, just because you see a little negative rate of rise or, a stalled rate of rise or whatever, what I'm trying to say is don't roast to a graph. If you roast to a graph, you're going to chase your tail because what you're going to be doing is constantly increasing and decreasing the temperature and modulating it, trying to match a graph and trying to match a curve. And there's really not a big point to that because that's not where the flavor is, man. The flavor is in here and it's in your cup of coffee. And so, stay close to the curve, but don't chase your tail trying to be exactly on that curve. So I'm at 12 minutes. I'm at 4:17. I'm going to call this one done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump out into this pan. And the reason I'm doing this is because my cooler is right there next to me, but it's a little bit far away and it's connected to a shop vac. And I don't have this for sale yet, but I will soon, or something like it. This is basically a Hive lid upside down with a piece of screen in it, if you can hear me. Okay, So now we got to do one more thing, which is we're going to weigh this coffee and we're going to see how much it weighs. And the reason for that is I want to know what my moisture loss was. So I got 127. So let's do a little math here real quick. So yeah, that was a 12-minute total time roast. So we're going to go 150 minus 127 equals 23, divided again by 150 equals 15.3. So basically what that tells me is I've lost 15.3% of the weight of the roast, which is really, really good considering the color of this bean. So like normally a 15% roast would be a very light roast. Because we're roasting on a hive, it's not as light as you would think based on that number. So let me come over here in front of the camera and see if you guys can see these beans or not. Can you guys see that? So that's basically what we just did. These beans are a little shiny, but they're also still pretty hot. I didn't really cool them very much. Part of it is that cooler makes a terrible noise, and if I was watching this video and I heard that fan running, I'd be turning the video down. So anyways, that's all I got for you today. So we've got we got one more metric to figure out here. Okay, so we had a total roast time of 12 minutes. We had a pop at 8 minutes. 12 minus 8 equals 4 divided by 12 equals 33. So I developed this coffee for 33% of the roast, approximately. I mean, the times aren't exact because honestly, I wasn't looking right at the timer when it popped, but pretty close. So that's a long development. So what's that going to do? It's going to be really mellow. It's going to be really, really sweet. So anyhow, so there we go. We've got a 12-minute roast. We did 150 grams. We got left with 127 grams. We lost 15.3% with a 33% development and an end temperature of 417 degrees. So that's pretty much all the metrics that you guys would need to know. Other than the most important metric is the flavor. And I do that to kind of gauge like what I think the flavor of my coffee might be later. And so I'm not chewing up the bean. I'm just cracking it and kind of breathing in the air a little bit. And it gives me kind of a good idea about what this coffee is going to taste like. This is what I expected. It's a very, very chocolatey, very, very smooth coffee. The other thing that biting one right after you roast does, I mean, I'm way beyond where I'm concerned about this being underdeveloped, right? I did, 33% development. But if I was close, like if I was riding the edge kind of, I can bite the bean and I can know if it's underdeveloped because one, it'll taste sour, and two, it'll be very, very hard to break in my teeth. Like it'll hurt my teeth. So anyways, check out Instagram, check out IGTV. Subscribe to this channel if you feel inclined. You can hit a little bell for, an alert. It tells you, I don't know, I guess if I have a new video out, it'll tell you. And comment if you guys like the video, if the format's terrible, if you can't hear what I'm saying, if my forehead is too big, if my shop's a mess or whatever, let me know. The last couple of videos I did facing towards the kitchen area over there, and it just isn't me. We make these here. This is a product that's made in this very building. Not so much with these tools. These are more of like these more assemble the tools that I make the hives with. The actual real business goes on in here. I've got a big hydraulic press behind this wall, and that thing that you can see in the back there by my bicycle is what I use to trim. But anyways, a very, very small company. Each one of these is handmade, and I mean literally handmade. Like I do every part of this by hand, other than actually pressing the metal, because that would be a feat of strength that I'm not capable of. So anyways, thanks for joining, and we'll hopefully see you guys next time. Bye.